Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is award season here amongst pop culture, and our favorite movies that we've seen over the past year are about to receive the praise, or scorn, that they deserve. So, in the spirit of award season, I present to you your own Critics' Choice Awards, the most ridiculous critiques from collectors over the past year. Well, what's up everyone, and welcome back to the channel, our first video of the 2024 year. Just like all the good award shows out there, I'm going to make you wait for just a moment for a quick commercial, and that commercial is this. If you've not yet viewed my latest collection tour video, where I show all the hard work that I put into my new display cabinets and taking a look at close to 400 6-scale figures, then you've truly missed out. So please make sure that you do check that out. And perhaps the reason that you did miss that was because you are not subscribed to this channel. Yeah, so please go ahead and make sure that you are subscribed. Go ahead, give me a presumptive like on this video. And once you're done here, go back and rewatch the collection tour. I would certainly appreciate it. And oh, I almost forgot. If you can't tell, there are a few new social icons down below. That's right, in addition to TikTok and Instagram, I've officially added my hat into the ring on Threads and X, formerly known as Twitter. Now, I know some of those platforms are not for everybody, but if you want to have all the updates, including my rants, thoughts, toy photography, as well as TikToks, Reels, and more, then, well, you want to make sure that you are following everything, and the links to all those are in my channel bio. Now, back to our featured program, okay? The most ridiculous critiques from collectors over the past year. Now, a thing about us collectors is that we are rather fickle, critical, and overall silly bunch of individuals. One day we can hate something, and then the next day we can absolutely love it. It's just built into our DNA, apparently. It's amazing to me the things that mean so much to some mean so little to others, but at the end of the day, it is our opinions that really make up who we are as individuals, and I would never want to squash the opinion of someone just because it's different from mine, but there are a few call-outs that I wanted to look at and highlight to see whether or not they are worthy of our criticism, or whether we should stop being so nitpicky. So, with each critique, I'm going to label it an overreaction, an underreaction, or simply a fair critique. So disclaimer, before we get into this top 10, if these are critiques that you feel are valid, remember, these are not personal attacks. This is just a discourse to keep us talking. So let's dive in to number 10. And our first critique on our list has actually been making an appearance every year. Points for consistency. It seems right on schedule. At the beginning of May, there is that continued letdown that are the reveals for May the 4th and the Star Wars line. This past year, it seemed collectors were in a frenzy, thinking that there's going to be an incredible announcement to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. Of course, May the 4th came, and we got a whopping 2 releases to date. That being Return of the Jedi Darth Vader and a fully golden die-cast C-3PO. Now, I've been pretty vocal about how lame that Vader is and how silly the eye was for that 3PO, but are collectors right to be critical of so few offerings? We are getting the Mustard Trooper after all, and no-name characters from that weak-ass 3rd season of The Mandalorian. But we can't have iconic characters like Endor Han or a brand new Chewbacca and a really cool creature from Jabba's palace perhaps? So I'm officially going to label this a fair critique. I think it's insane that some of the most beloved characters of all time from arguably the most popular IP of all time are barely getting any love. Now of course, no one knows what's really going on behind the scenes. Perhaps it is a licensing issue or something else that is holding up these releases and reveals. After all, we did just get a tease that Hot Toys had acquired new licenses, such as Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which brings up a bigger question. Doesn't Hot Toys have the Star Wars license already? Whenever you are pursuing a new figure, do you have to get it specifically licensed for that film? And if that is what's holding up some of these reveals, what's the deal? Are these figures not under the Star Wars umbrella? As you can see, a lot more questions than answers, obviously, but as I said, this is a fair criticism, and hopefully one that will be rectified soon. But next up is a critique that I'm going to outright defend and tell you right at the beginning, this is an overreaction. And that critique is this: the Blue Bailman, or as everyone else knows him, the WB100 Batman from The Dark Knight. Now, this one has become a little bit of a running joke, and so low on the list that it does bring up a fair talking point. Is Hot Toys wasting time with these unique color palettes and exclusives? As we just talked about, the last point, we're already starving for some genuine fresh characters, so putting out a repaint of an already existing figure seems like a bit of a cash grab, and so many say. But as I said, I don't think so. This is giving collectors an opportunity to get something unique, and I am all for that. No one's forcing you to buy this by any means, so this one, if it may not be for you, then it's not for you. I get it. On to the next thing. But what I do like about this, and I think it's a good idea, is it gives collectors an opportunity to chase exclusives that are unique enough to not cause other collectors to be frustrated if they do miss out on it. Let's say there is that new indoor Han, and it's limited to 300 pieces and perhaps locked behind an exclusive tag. Now that will get people really upset. Now, before you bring up the video game Spider-Man figures, I would say that they are unique in the fact that they are essentially re-releases, not brand new figures. Perhaps you may think I'm wrong about that, but that's what my comment section is for, so let me know down below. Moving on to number 8, and that is the notion of increasing prices across the board. Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or an economics professor to realize that costs are up across the entire world, and in general, wages are down for a majority of people. And as I said, this is worldwide. It's not just isolated to the United States where I live. So with that being said, I think the pricing topic is a fair critique. Kinda. Where I have trouble with this is when everyone is getting upset about a $5 increase on Sideshow's website, but no one is saying anything about certain studios producing $2,000 silicone figures and collectors being okay with Hong Kong resellers that are legit gouging you for first batch prices. Now I know one of these subtopics doesn't apply to everybody, but if you are going to be upset with a $5 essentially cost of living increase at a North American distributor, then that being Sideshow, you better be raising a stink about just how much a convenience fee that these resellers and other companies are charging for day one figures. What I'm getting at is that you can't have your cake and eat it too. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a Sideshow shill. I have no vested interest in them, other than the fact that I get my figures from them. Full price, mind you. But I am more than okay with an across-the-board price increase on goods and services rather than manipulation and price gouging. And don't come at me with the, "you're just not a real collector." I certainly am a real collector, and I can admit that prices and increases are some things to keep an eye on, and is a fair criticism as I said, but perhaps we are underreacting to other increases that may or may not affect you directly. It's just something to think about. Alright, on to a less serious topic, but still a topic nonetheless, and one that certainly got a lot of attention, but one I can firmly say is an overreaction, and that is the quality control regarding the latest Wolverine figure, or should I say, the Wolverine. For those that don't know, the recent Days of Future Past Wolverine had a few hiccups, to say the least, upon its release. Some said the sculpt was too soft, it was a downgrade from the prototype, and that may be a fair critique, but the overall feeling toward this figure is a total overreaction. As we'll see in a few other critiques later on, in-hand photos are always going to be so much more helpful in the completing of the puzzle that is a new release than blogger photos, and that's just a fact at this point. Perhaps the most jarring and egregious error was not the bad head sculpt. You can still tell that that is Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, but rather the nameplate sticker on the deluxe base. That's right, you're reading it correctly. It says Wolverine. Now, is this a quality issue that is unacceptable at this price point? Yes, especially when the announcement photos has it misspelled there too. But if no one caught it in 18 months from that moment on, are the name tags on stands really that big a deal? Yes, it's annoying that you're going to have to get a replacement sticker to put on that base. That sucks for sure, but completely disregarding this figure as a failure, and that this is evidence that Hot Toys is officially over as a high-end company, that's definitely an overreaction. Perhaps Hot Toys has bitten off a bit too much in their volume of their releases, and perhaps they do need to dial back the number of releases to improve that quality. That's a fair argument to have, but dismissing a figure completely because of a misspelling, I think it's an overreaction, but perhaps I'm wrong. Let me know down below. So, we've had some overreactions as we just talked about, but now it's time to do a couple back-to-back underreactions. And our first one we're going to stick with another figure that was announced and criticized originally, but I feel has been an underreaction. And that figure is the abysmal prototype that was shown of Supergirl from the Flash movie. Now, when you want to talk about a total miss of a head sculpt, this is it. It is borderline shameful what they did in capturing the likeness of this figure, and what is worse, the silence that we have heard from it since. Perhaps that is the apathy that is the DC Universe at this point, but I know there are Superman and Supergirl fans out there, and they deserve an update for this figure. If you as a company are willing to put out 4 separate figures that have the likeness of the troubled Ezra Miller and continue production, as far as we know, of Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror, then you can certainly make updates to this Supergirl figure. Is this the figure for me? No, it's not, but I do know that there are plenty of people who are very excited about this from a cultural representation, as well as the female representation. And those fans deserve to have a better prototype and ultimately a better product when it eventually releases. So fingers crossed that Hot Toys does the right thing in the end. Well, we made it to the top 5. And you know anything about me and the live streams that I do on Fridays, you know that there is certainly a company that I have not been afraid to share some opinions on, and that is InArt. And I believe that this is a huge underreaction to the criticism of their batch release system. So, for the uninformed that may not be familiar with InArt products and their distribution, they choose to release their new figures whenever that may be, but that may be a topic for another time as well, but they choose to release their figures by a process known as the batch system. That means that they send out as many figures as they can at one point and wait, and then send out more figures at another point. There isn't a general release date like Hot Toys does. Where the criticism comes from is just how many are sent out in the first few batches, and how prioritization of influencers and online personalities works in relation to the average collector. This creates a lot of negativity, and yes, you can say it, it does create jealousy and negative feelings rather than building anticipation. You may be sitting there saying, well, influencers get them so they can influence viewers to make a purchase. Yeah, that's great and all, but the figures are already sold out, so they say. So what is the point of something that they can't have, and knowing that they can't have it for a few more months at least compared to when someone else has it? It's a criticism that I think is not being communicated loudly enough to InArt, and if they want to be a big player in the 6-scale market moving forward, I think it is something that definitely needs to be communicated to them, and they need to make adjustments accordingly. But once again, that just may be me overreacting to one finally, and let me know if I am in the comments below. So now, the number 4. Let's go back to Sideshow, since everyone thinks I have nothing but positive things to say about them, and we're going to talk about Sideshow's new queue system, and it has seemingly screwed over a few too many collectors, myself included, and naturally, because I am affected, I think this is a fair criticism. So let's do a quick little history lesson, shall we? We already talked about the WB100 Batman. That was one of the first figures to be put up through the queue system. This came about because of the disaster of the Stealth Suit Captain America 2.0 release that ended up crashing the servers, and it was an absolute free-for-all, nasty. So fast forward back to the Batman, and we're all put into a queue waiting on our turn to access the site and purchase the figure if we wanted. This worked out for the Batman. This worked out for Miles. This worked out for Spider-Man. And at least it did for me, so no complaints? Then there was the reveal of a new line of figures called the Artisan series. The first one went up for pre-order, and that was the new Artisan Joker. I hit the queue, and I hit the jackpot, and I got in and got out with the figure that I wanted. But all that glitters was not all gold, because next on the list was going to be the much anticipated Artisan Anakin. I got there early, did the queue thing, and thought everything was going to be fine, but the problem was they started changing the rules due to the number of people online, delaying the actual release, reshuffling the queue, and an overall nasty experience ensued for the consumer. If you want my full rant about that and how I struck out on Anakin, I have a full video about it, but although I struck out on Anakin, I did succeed in the next one, getting the Scarlet Witch, but then struck out on the comic Spider-Man. So maybe it is doing its job, giving people a fair opportunity to get these figures without crashing the site. But I think it's a fair criticism to ask, is it effective? How many people are getting screwed, and is there a better way to do it? I honestly don't have the answer to that, but let me know your thoughts on the system below. All right, we're finally into the top 3, and we're going to finish strong by telling you right now that there are 3 figures that are definitely going to be overreacted on. But if you've made it this far and you have not yet subscribed and you do like this type of 6-scale content, please go ahead and subscribe, give me that like, and join in on all the fun. So, number 3 is the overreaction that came from the Doc Ock figure from Spider-Man No Way Home. When this figure was first previewed, a lot of people did a double take and said, what the hell is this? And what is going on with the head sculpt? Hot Toys even came out and said, this is not the finished head sculpt and that when it releases, it will be better. Fast forward, of course, to that release, and what did we get? A lot of really bent out of shape collectors. People immediately began slamming this figure, canceling their orders, and saying that their Spidey shelf would never be complete. There are some who are claiming falsely, for that matter, that the Toys Era version was actually the superior figure, which is objectively not true. The hate for this new Alfred Molina head sculpt was at a fever pitch until the figure started to land in people's hands. And just like a crying baby that gets its bottle, collectors started to settle down. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that the sculpt is a 10 out of 10, or that it's an incredible likeness, but what I am going to say is this, that far too many collectors overreacted over initial photos. The tailoring of a figure, the articulation of the legs, the presence that it exudes on the shelf are undeniably awesome. And yes, even under the right lighting and posing, the head sculpt is more than serviceable. So all that to say is that I think we overreacted to potentially the only Doc Ock figure that we are ever going to get. But the good thing is, I'm sure we learned our lesson, didn't we? Well, of course not. And that brings us to number 2. And what do you know? It's another figure from the Spider-Man No Way Home line. And no, I'm not talking about the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man because collectors freaked out about that too. Maybe it's a Spidey thing. No, I'm talking about the Toby Maguire Spider-Man that just came out, that apparently can't catch a break with anyone. No, I know that the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films are the definitive movie Spider-Man for a lot of collectors. I mean, I get it. Any movie that can harness the power of Nickelback on their soundtrack definitely gets my attention, but can we talk about this latest release for just a moment? In fact, quarterback Aaron Rodgers once said it from the podium before, relax. I think we all as collectors have to get it in our mind that not everything is going to be able to translate properly to 1/6 scale. People nitpicking the neck, the eyes, the webbing, everything in between. Are we consumers able to voice our criticisms? Of course, that's the whole point of this video, but where we overreact is when you block your own blessings and refuse to add something that could bring you joy to your shelf because everyone else around you is saying it sucks. Is it a perfect figure? No, far from it, but are you willing to completely not have a Toby Spider-Man on your shelf because everyone else said it's bad? I say all that to say this. Make the decision for yourself and not to follow the overreaction mob. It is easy to crap on something when everybody else is crapping on it. What you could do is not cancel your order. Have it come in, unbox it, look at it, decide for yourself, and if you still do not like it, then send it back. But I think this is an overreaction, and it doesn't need to be. Am I wrong? Let me know. And finally, the biggest criticism that I've heard from collectors, not just over the past year, but for the past 5 years or more, is this. More Iron Man? I'm sorry, but this is one that's just not going to go away. Iron Man is a Hot Toys best seller, and it's not even close. When you have something that actually works as a product and as a business, you find out how to continually do something that makes you money. And Hot Toys' answer is Iron Man, without question. Now, I know people are frustrated because we aren't just getting new Iron Man figures, we're getting 2.0s and 3.0s of already released Iron Man figures, which is unfortunate because if you have the 1 or 2.0, you're now sitting on an older, outdated figure and you're weighing the cost of having to upgrade and whether it's worth it. Does it suck? Sure. Perhaps these Iron Man figures are taking the spots of other figures that need QA or need to be developed in the first place, and that is a fair critique, but asking Hot Toys to stop making Iron Man figures is essentially telling them to go out of business, and that would not be good for any collectors. So, spoiler alert, get ready for some more Iron Man figures headed your way, but just remember, for every Iron Man figure sold, that is more money in Hot Toys' pocket to develop a special figure that you actually may want down the line. Maybe even Shin and Balin. Hey, we can dream, right? Well, that's going to do it for us here today. The 10 most ridiculous criticisms from collectors. So what do you think? Are we too nitpicky as individuals? Have we made too big of a deal out of things that shouldn't be? Or are some of these concerns valid? Which ones did I miss? And which ones do you think I'm just flat out wrong about? As I said, I value your opinions, so let me know down below what you think. And as I said earlier, there are so many ways to stay connected with all my different accounts, but the most important one is making sure you are subscribed to this channel. So please make sure that you do that. And of course, make sure that you have seen my latest collection tour. I honestly am proud of it, and I think you will enjoy it too. As always, happy collecting. Thank you for having and sharing your opinions, and I'll be seeing you in our next video.